Welcome back. It's time for another Intrigue Journal, and look who just flew into our studio. But Julianne, good to see you.
Nice to see you, too. Well, today we continue with the afterlife. Last time it was near-death experiences, people who were clinically dead, and they went on to experience a little bit of the afterlife, post-brain, consciousness outside of the brain, came back and told about it. So they had sort of a round-trip ticket. Today we're going to talk about the one-way ticket.
Oh.
End-of-life experiences. These are dreams and visions had by people who are walking this end-of-life experience, as well as the wisdom acquired by the people who are with them on the journey. Close family and friends, doctors, nurses. Now, death can be a scary topic for some people because there's a lot of anxiety about it. But what I find is that the people who are closest to it are actually comforted by these stories. And I think in opening dialogue, in sharing stories, we lift the fear. We're able to then also experience the joy and beauty in dying.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is there.
Okay.
So I have, at the end of the segment, I have a very positive message, so stay tuned.
Okay. We will.
It's going to make a lot of people very happy.
Okay, good.
First, the science. We have Dr. Kerr. Here we go. He is the chief medical doctor of Buffalo Hospice. He has conducted a lot of studies in this area. He's actually, one of the studies involved 59 patients, and these patients had zero medication, or they were on medication they had been on their entire life. So they kind of ruled out the delirium. They did several interviews about dreams or visions these people had. 88% of them reported having at least one as they neared their death. 72% of those experiences involved a predeceased loved one that was there. Now, 45% of them, these experiences happened in a dream state. But they describe them as something that seemed more real, more vivid, not your typical dream. 40% of them began in a dream state and then transitioned into a waking vision, and 15% of them happened in a waking vision. This seems really unusual to us, but it's heavily reported. People on the verge of death can see things we can't see. They
That's
have
true.
one foot in, one foot out, kind of
Yeah.
a double exposure. They're able to see the people that have already passed along with the people that are there with them. Hospice nurses will tell us that they are not confused. We are the ones that are confused that they're having this very real experience, and it's important to affirm that. There's a very good story about a man named Walt. In the book Peaceful Passages, which I read, it's written by, here she is, Janet Weir, lovely woman, lots of wisdom. I got to talk to her yesterday. She has 27 years of hospice experience. This man by the name of Walt, actually, he had just been admitted to hospice. They were doing the intake for him, and he stopped the nurse and said, "I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave." And she says, "You want me to leave?" And he says, "Yes, yes, please," very matter-of-factly. She gathers up her things to respect his wishes, but she says, "Can I ask you why you need me to leave?" And he says, "Because they're here for me." And she says, "Who's here?" And he reaches his arm around a space beside him and says, "This is my wife, Audrey." And he extends his arm a little bit further, and he whispers, "This is our Lord." And she leaves and comes back 15 minutes later, and Walt is gone.
Do we have time for one question?
Yes.
Okay. Why is it sometimes they prefer to be alone? Because we don't understand? Maybe?
Yes, it's just a comfort level. We're going to get to that
Okay,
too.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I love
lots of stories like that. Janet also gives us some very practical lessons on how to recognize signs and also how to respond to them. For instance, there's a lot of symbolic talk about going on a trip, packing their bags, hoping the taxi arrives on time. And it's important to affirm them in this and tell them your bags are packed, the taxi's going to arrive when it should, the flight's not going to be delayed, everything's okay. They need to know it's okay. The situation is under control, and they need to know we're okay. They have some anxiety about that. And then that lets them relax and kind of ease into the natural transition. There's also the sense that you have to stay on top of the pain. Because we stay connected to our pain, so that delays our leaving as well. One thing Janet said, which I found very interesting, was that if she says if you're on top of or meet their spiritual and emotional needs, a lot of times the physical pain eases on its own. You don't need medication. So the mind-body connection is very important. And like you said, choices. You have to give them choices. So don't always be by their bedside because they might be attached to somebody. They don't want to hurt us. They want it to be easy for us. So let them know, I'm going to I'm going to go up the hallway for 15 minutes, you know, like leave you be alone and give them that chance to go if they want at that moment. And then also to know that they can hear you. Hearing is the last to go. There's a story of a woman named Dottie who was at the very end of life, very unresponsive, and her husband had just returned from making some burial arrangements, and he had a hard time talking about the whole process. And Janet encouraged him to share with Dottie the plans he had made because she knew that Dottie wanted to be a part of it. So he says, okay, goes to her bedside, and she is, you know, unresponsive, and he starts telling her about the casket. He says, real beautiful. I think you're going to love the color. He says, it's not expensive, but it's also not a cheapie. And then he kind of lights up, and he remembers. He says, oh, I got you this great spot in the mausoleum here in the upper right-hand corner. And if you go just a little diagonal from there, that's where your sister is. At that point, the unresponsive Dottie opens one eye and says, how much did all of this cost us?
Wow! Isn't that funny?
It is so funny.
Oh,
So
my gosh.
the point is, it's okay to experience all of life right up until the last moment, to all of the emotions. You don't have to remain in the sadness. You can be happy and have humor. End of life can really give us a gift, a chance to say our goodbyes, and to know that we are more than body. We're a spirit.
Right.
So along with, like I talked about, the predeceased coming to visit us and take us away, there's also knowledge of undisclosed facts. There was two men in the same household, both in hospice, a man named Chuck and his father-in-law, Bill. Bill dies first. They go down to tell Chuck in his room, and Chuck says, he already has tears down his cheeks, and he says, I know, Bill stopped by, he said goodbye, and he says he's going to come back and get me when it's time.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow.
Inexplicable strength in the last moments, visions of a spiritual being. I have a close friend who, his father, in the last week of his life, not a particularly religious person, but he would sit up and point to the corner and say, there's Jesus. Do you see him? And he'd look at it, and, do you see him? Wow. Knowledge of when death might occur. So sometimes the hospice nurse will say, I'm going on vacation for a couple days. I'll see you when I get back. And no, I won't be here when you're back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Choice over death. Sometimes they're telling them, don't go away. I'm not ready for you yet.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that.
And some of the nurses and people near the bedside will see a mist rise when the person passes, or a glow, or a violet, or a... And sometimes there's just a sudden open of the eyes and a look into the distance, and they smile and take their last breath. And
Wow.
That's what happened to my grandma. I was not there, she passed, but my grandmother's known for her eyes and the sparkle in her eye. My grandmother opened the eye, the sparkle, my Aunt Beth said, and then the sparkle was gone.
yes, and I've
It
heard
was
about
like, you
that
see
sparkle.
that, you see the sparkle, and it's gone.
Yes, yes. Now the Steve Jobs, perfect example. Those were his last words.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow. Oh,
And
wow.
he's a known
wow.
atheist, I believe.
Yeah.
Isn't it, right?
That means Jesus forgave him for not believing.
Love that. Love that.
That's what I say.
Julianne, we just got a minute left.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to go to the promised positive message. Let me just set it up here.
Yeah.
This is a hospice nurse talking about a patient that was having a waking vision and describing it to his family there. Let's see what she says.
He said, I can see, and it's beautiful here. It's beautiful. He goes, there's animals. And then he stopped, and he looked at his son, and he says, your dog is here. Yeah. And so, of course, now we're all crying, you know. And then it was like probably an hour and a half later that he died.
Oh, that's beautiful. Julianne, we want to do another segment with you on this because we could talk about this forever. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. And thanks, guys, so much for tuning in.
To Ozarks Fox AM, have a great day. I have a feeling we'll be continuing this conversation.
See you tomorrow.